Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 71 of my 100-day project. It is the first day of gouache, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous about today. I don't have a love-hate relationship with gouache. I do enjoy gouache. I just use it when I'm in the mood. I have a tendency to like to go thick with my paint, and that does not work really well with gouache. I also have a tendency to like to add a lot of water to my watercolor and my acrylic ink and, get these fluid effects. That does not work with gouache. So when I use gouache, I kind of need to be in the mood for it so that I can work with it the way that will get me the results that I'm looking for. So I was a little bit nervous coming to the surface today, and it actually didn't go poorly. Like, the gouache itself was fine. I didn't fight with it. I had two issues in the painting today. One was the size of the brushes that I brought with me. So I have been doing this upstairs at a place in my studio that I've set up for filming. And so I bring my supplies up to that table, and I brought a 1/2-inch brush, which is the one that I use through the bulk of the painting. I brought a smaller one, but it's very, very thick. It holds a lot of water and would not be good for detail. And then I brought a bigger round, which was too big for the detail I was looking for. And then I brought a liner brush, which I end up using a lot more of than I normally would. And then I had these new brushes by Fumi. They have like this long reservoir kind of tip to them. I use them only to do the whites of the eyes. And I don't know, I need to work with them a little bit more. They were a little, I didn't know quite how to use them. So I was missing a brush that was either a flat or a round that's roughly around a size 6, so somewhere around 1/4 of an inch. And I struggled a little bit getting the marks that I was looking for in the finer areas because I was using this bigger brush. So that was one of the things that I had a bit of a struggle with. The other thing was her eyes. So when I did my drawing at the very beginning, I made my reference points, my vertical line and my horizontal line. My horizontal line was just a little bit skewed. If you go back and look at the proportions of each of those 4 areas, they don't match up. The line kind of goes off a little bit, and that, I think, was the first place where I ran into trouble. So for the rest of the painting, her eyes just aren't lined up, and I check them several times because I know there's an issue there, and I keep looking and I can't figure out exactly what the issue is. So I do end up fixing it or addressing it towards the end, and I end up doing that off camera again. I'm sorry, y'all. When I take the phone down and I step away from the painting and I can actually look at the footage, that's one of the ways that I can really see what's going on with the piece. The other is by setting it up somewhere and looking at it from a distance. And that really gives me the insight around if something isn't lined up or the proportions are odd or something like that. So I saw what I needed to fix after I took the camera down. So I ended up fixing that off camera. But like, even now you can see the eye on the right-hand side of the painting is a little bit higher than the eye on the left. Now, at this point, it's still early on and it's easily fixed. But as I add more and more, it becomes more challenging to fix things. So had I slowed down a little bit and made sure that those lines, those reference lines, were more accurate, it would have saved me a little bit of time later. You don't have to have a perfect drawing at the beginning. It just means a little more work towards the end. And in some cases, it makes it very difficult for you to move things. Gouache, like watercolor, you can layer with gouache, but remember, everything underneath activates as you layer. So you just need to be careful how you layer with it. And ideally, your reference points it might serve you better to have your reference points kind of nailed from the beginning. So that's just a good reminder for me to slow down a little bit with the gouache and just check my reference points. You know, not everybody's eyes are perfect, not everybody is proportional. So that's the other part of it as well. I usually don't worry too much if things aren't quite proportionate or even, because people aren't. And I want my people to be interesting. And to me, that's what makes things interesting. So I don't worry about it too much. But this one was just, it was bothering me a little bit. The left side of her face is also in shadow, and that was messing with me, not because of the shadow, but because sometimes that can play tricks on you. If you don't have the same amount of variation in the values as you do in the lighter side of the face. And so it can seem like something is higher or lower or flatter because the value difference isn't there. And in an ideal world, it wouldn't matter which side of the face had shadow or light. What you want is a nice mix of values throughout your painting, for the most part. Sometimes, you know, if you have something really, really dark shadows or you're making the lighting very dramatic, maybe you don't want the same amount of variation in the value. It just all depends on the piece. But the highlight under the brow on the right side of her face is very strong. And the highlights and the value differences on the left are not as strong. So automatically that eye on the right side of the painting looks higher. And so it bothered me, and I wanted to address that a little bit. And to address it, I did three things. I took the corner of the eye on the left and I brought it down a little bit. And I took the corner of the eye on the right and brought it down a little bit. I brought the corner of the eye on the left eye, the left side of the painting down a little bit. And then I darkened up the eyebrows underneath, and I made the eyebrow on the right-hand side of the painting a little bit bigger. And that helped. So I didn't have to move features per se. Because they were lined up pretty well, I used my paintbrush handle to really check for whether or not those points were landing on the same plane, on the same line on the face. And that was what I needed to address. And although it's not perfect at the end when you see the pictures and the close-ups, it lines up better. So at this point, I've got the form in. I've added a little bit of highlight to her hair, a little bit of shadow to her hair, and I just wanted a neutral kind of purpley gray color for the background to have the bright parts of her face really jump out. Her eye, that one focal point eye, is a mixture of green, that bright green color you can see in the palette, with some blue. And the darker shadow in her iris is that darker teal, and the highlight part is that green. So I wanted a little bit of purple in the background to offset that green and really help that jump out. And it's funny, I was looking at this afterwards, and she looks very similar to a painting I did in, I think it was the first one I did in oil, maybe? She looks very similar, except I think she's looking in a different direction. I don't remember, but it's kind of like I'm painting this handful of people just in different, maybe on different days. It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It'll be interesting to see when they're all up next to each other. And, maybe I'll identify these 5 different people or whatever that I've been painting this whole time. So So at this point, you'll see me kind of going back and forth with the eyes, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. I know it's not quite where I want it to be. And so now if you look at it, I've kind of brought the corners down. I've added a little bit more highlight to her lid on the eye on the left side. I've darkened the eyebrow on the eye on the right side. They're not perfect, but they are a little bit more in line than they were. And I do have to say, I really enjoy doing this. I think all the work that I've been doing with oil paint, all the work I've been doing with the pastels, with the drawing oils, even though these media or these mediums are very different in the way that they work, the principles of painting have just gotten stronger for me. They've reinforced for me on this journey. How to add in shadows, where the planes of the face are, where, creating more variation without too much blending. All of these things is what I've been practicing these 71 days. So even though the mediums have been shifting, those things are becoming deeper and deeper ingrained, which made coming to the gouache a lot easier of a transition than I thought it was going to be. So that's a really interesting takeaway and insight for me. I saved what I've told myself is going to be the most challenging one for the last, which is the charcoal and the graphite. So we will see if that does still feel challenging to me. Maybe it won't, if the skills that I've been building all along have built this muscle memory, and maybe that'll feel a lot easier. I don't know. I'm excited to see. I've still got 29 days to build even more muscle memory. So, well, it'll be less than that because I'll start that the last 10 days. But anyway, I'm rambling. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care of you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.